Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War Frontline update for the 29th of July 2024. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please check out the key on the video at the moment. Right, if we go to the map and go to the northern sectors northeast of Kharkiv, we can see that there are no changes to the Geopolitics area that has seen quite a bit of activity over the last week or so. I don't have deep state maps lines up at the moment. I haven't had time to update them. When we go to the Vovchansk area, there are quite a few claims going on. So first of all, there are claims that the Russians have been pushed out of the southern area of the Vovcha River. Okay, there's quite a few claims pertaining to that. I think reporting from Ukraine did a video on that, possibly this morning or yesterday. The ISW Institute for the Study of War says, I've actually gone to the ISW straight because there's quite a bit of content I want to, I know that on my website there is ATP distilled, there's the distilled version of this, but I just want to go into some detail here. So Russian forces likely no longer retain positions on the south or left bank of the Vovcha River within Vovchansk amid continued fighting north and northeast of Kharkiv city. Russian and Ukrainian sources have stopped reporting on Russian offensive activities on the southern side of the Volga River within Vovchansk since the ISW observed Russian forces operating in the area on July the 10th. Several Russian sources claim that Russian forces no longer maintain positions on the south bank, and Ukrainian positions in central Vovchansk suggests that Russian positions on the north or the right bank of the Volga River are likely not secure enough to support enduring positions across the river. A Russian mill blogger claimed that Russian forces only control the western part of the aggregate plant within western Vovchansk. So that is to say they're not operating south of the river here, and they are only controlling the western area of the plant here. So Andrew Perpetua has a larger area under Russian control. Actually, Surat Maps only has this area under Russian control, but the Russians much further to the south. This is contested by most sources at the moment. When we then go to the rest of this section in the ISW, Ukrainian Kharkiv group of forces spokesperson stated that the Russian forces are suffering from significant losses and are exhausting their limited reserves. He's also stated that Russian forces are using different tactics in the Kharkiv direction, sometimes attacking in small groups with artillery support and attacking in large groups at other times. Sarantsev reported that Russian forces in the Kharkiv direction are almost exclusively transporting personnel and ammunition and conducting artillery fire from within Russian territory and not within northern Kharkiv Oblast due to Ukrainian strikes. So that is to say that the attacks really are coming from within Russian territory. They're not based, they don't have supply depots here due to Ukrainian drones basically controlling all of this area with regard to these lines of communication. We have heard that previously. We'd heard that this has been an issue in the other sector as well. So interesting claims there. When we go to the Surat Maps description, what's going on, the situation in Northern Front from Chihuv axis, the battle for Vovchansk continues. During the last 4 days, Ukrainian army managed to recapture Stepova streets at the northeastern part of town and some positions west of Soborna Street and adjacent to the central market. So that is to say that there are some gains for the Ukrainians north of the aggregates area, right in the middle of the town. So looking at cutting off the outpost there, and then some further gains sort of northeast of the town as well, going into the sort of rural area as well. So this is one of the better areas for the Ukrainians at the moment. You're just about to see an awful lot of pins without many blue pins. In fact, the only blue pin there is one from yesterday. No change to the northeastern axis from Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea. ISW reports that there is activity around Sinkivka and lots of activity up and down this front line. So it's good to see no change in the last 24 hours. Then when we come down to the Seversk front line, interesting that the northern part of the Bakhmut sector is showing some activity. But let's go to the Institute for the Study of War that says geolocated footage published on July the 27th indicates that the Ukrainian forces recently regained lost positions in western Ivano-Darivka, and what this is referring to drone drops on claimed Ukrainian positions. So this is supposed to be where Ukrainians are let's have a little look at this. My guess is it's going to be around this area, which is to the west of, in fact, there you go, Ivano Darivka, which is to the west of Smyrna. Now, there were some buildings here that had a Russian flag popped on top. We didn't know whether it was due to a drone dropping the flag. There were some people in that same video, but you couldn't tell whether they were Ukrainian or Russians. And then it cut later to there being a flag on top of the building. So this is where Ukrainians now are and are being attacked by Russian drones. So that would suggest that Andrew Perpetua is probably correct in suggesting that this area wasn't under Russian control, and he was a bit more cautious and left that a big fat grey zone. And with Ukrainians operating in that area, it could suggest that actually what we'll see, no doubt, is that after some time and eventually giving up on these claims due to videos coming out that Surat Maps will walk back the claims here. It's sort of these sort of claims where the Russians aren't particularly attacking that are often like the incorrect ones that mean that there's a massive difference between the mappers. I mean, that's a huge difference there, and you get that in a number of places where you're thinking, yeah, I don't necessarily trust that Surat Maps is going to have it right there. When you look at the claims that they make that are ahead of the game in the very active areas of the front line, they often aren't correct, but they end up being correct. So these are the ones that are more trustworthy for Surat Maps, where there's, really heavy fighting going on. But where there's a bit of a weird one happening, my suggestion is that you're much better off listening to Andrew Perpetua in those kind of areas. Right, then we're going to come down to this area coming out past Orikove-Vasilivka, Paraskevivka here, this road that came out the north of Bakhmut, across the Bakhmutivka River, if you remember back from all this long time ago, and going up through towards Pravilia. There was fighting along this E40 highway that happened quite a lot during the counterattack as well from the Ukrainians in May of last year. They were trying to force their way down this road, but they didn't actually have too much success. Bit of movement in that area, as according to Surat Maps. So they say in early July, it indicated the reactivation of the Sloviansk front after more than a year of inactivity. This does not mean a direct advance towards this city will be initiated, but this reactivation will have as its objectives: 1, the arrival of the northernmost channel of the Chaziv Yar, Hirivka and Orikove-Vasilivka elevated area, the seizure of Vazyukivka and Bondane, initiating the seizure of the heights of Pazeno, and initiating an advance towards Fedorivka, and consequently the beginning of an operation through the valley of the Bakhmutivka towards Seversk. We'll have to wait until at least autumn for this. Right, what's he trying to say? That basically this is looking like, there's Pazeno going towards Seversk up here. Seversk is one of the big objectives for the Russians for a long time. That will unlock the forest here and give a really much larger area of land that will be much more easily taken. But it's trying to get past Bilahorivka, trying to get through this undulating, much more difficult land here, and then coming across difficult, Ukrainian defenses around here. So this idea is think of a much larger offensive that will take Seversk, but you'll have to wait until the autumn. I don't know whether the Russians will be in a place to do any large offensive in the autumn, given the exhaustion and then the mud and the rain. So I think this is kind of hopeful rhetoric here from Surat Maps that I wouldn't put a lot of store in that, to be perfectly honest. But the Russians might have gained a couple of fields there or something, who knows. Right, no change to Chaziv Yar, but remember yesterday we saw that Surat Map changed the mapping to have some Russian presence across the canal to the west of the Donbass Canal here. Now, interestingly, the Institute for the Study of War, says the Russian forces continued offensive operations near Chaziv Yar, but there were no confirmed changes to the front line. A Russian mill blogger claimed that elements of the 98th VDV division advanced further east in Chaziv Yar and entered the outskirts of Zhovenevyi microrayon, so the micro region, or like urban district, and northern Novyi microrayon, although ISW has not observed confirmation of Russian forces operating on the western side of the Tversky Donetsk, that's it, Donbass Canal, within Chaziv Yar or its outskirts. So they haven't seen any evidence that this is the case, but it has been claimed. Surat Maps has changed the mapping to reflect that claim, but I think one must be very cautious, not necessarily dubious. I just be cautious that this is true or that they have lasting presence in those areas. But it could be, and like I said yesterday, if that is true, then that would probably spell a very slow end for Chasiv Yar. But we'll see if that's actually the case going forward. Right, then we come down to the Toretsk and New York area. In the Toretsk area, the Russians have made some large advances, as according to Surat Maps, into some of these areas, getting closer and closer to Toretsk proper, up towards Pivnichne, and also in the Zalizhne neighborhoods, and moving further to the north there. So that's a bit troubling for the Ukrainians if that is indeed the case. What do we have? That was a claim finally about getting across Chasiv Yar, Russians being able to consolidate a bridgehead west of the canal by seizing the first houses. We'll see if that turns out to be true. And then, some large, this is what I was going to say. I might have to go back to that though, because that's quite a big bit of text concerning Chasiv Yar. Anyway, Surat Map says the Russian armies continue advancing in the Zalizhne area, taking control over a series of buildings there, and into the Pivnichne, taking control of one of the districts in Pivnichne as well. So let's go back. So, it's not looking great in Touretsk there, as according to Surat Maps. Just want to go back to Chasiv Yar. I often do this because I forget I've got sources talking about stuff. So here Surat Map says reconnaissance operations. Let's pull up the map that they're talking about for you a little bit larger there. So this is where they've got across the canal, as according to Surat Maps. These would be the intended directions across a culvert up here and across the bridge there, although that would be blown now. The other culverts down here, but they're talking about mainly going across the canal into the buildings from just going across the canal in general. So Surat Mat says reconnaissance operations on the western bank of the canal had already taken place during the previous week. However, in the last few days, Russian troops were able to consolidate their positions in new districts of Chasiv Yar situated on the high ground, which will eventually force the Ukrainian forces to withdraw from the trenches to the canal. From the trenches of the canal. The final battle for the bastion, surrounded by important natural and human fortifications, numerous bunkers and trenches, and several high-rise buildings, begins. It will not be an easy battle, and it will be necessary for the Russian forces to take the northern flank. They are already shelling the western part of Kalinivka, and from there, the advance to the Pivnichny district and a refractory plant. This would considerably weaken the arrival of Ukrainian reinforcements and cause a gradual retreat of the central zone, an important focus of resistance that could be resolved relatively quickly with the development of an axis from the east. Contrary to what you might think, a withdrawal like that of Avdiivka is not contemplated until the arrival of Russian troops to Stopochki. It is then that a Ukrainian withdrawal in the south could begin, which has not happened since the Ukrainian army has been able to maintain its positions on the eastern bank south of Bakhmut. Okay, so this is all, obviously very positive for Russia, but it's saying that you're not going to see a massive retreat from Chasiv Yar unless Stopochki is taken, and that's becoming very difficult because, in fact, there were claims about a counterattack by the Ukrainians in Klishivka area in, I think, the Institute for the Study of War. So, because the Ukrainians have kept the Russians to the east of the canal all the way down here, they've been unable to get into a position that will be advantageous for taking Chasiv Yar. They have to go just solely from the east, and it makes it challenging because they have to negotiate the canal to do all of their attacking on Chasiv Yar. So correctly, Surat Map says it's going to be difficult without getting in from the south, from Stopochki, but whether they've actually got across the canal is, of course, another matter. Right, anyway, sorry to bounce around all over the shop. Then when we come to look at the Avdiivka or Pokrovsk section, we look here. So, oh goodness me, it's so annoying when it does this. Right, we have, that's further to the south, but that is the one. I think we've got another one just here. Yeah. Oh no, that's Krasnohorivka. Yeah. So this is the one further to the south. Oh no, it's Andrew Perpetua that has some confirmation of the Russian advances to the west of Novo-Alexandriivka towards Vozdizhenka, towards the T0504 highway. It claims that they're only sort of 5 kilometers or so from that really important road that connects Konstantinivka to Pokrovsk. Some claiming that the Russians are as close as 5 kilometers. That is definitely worrying for the Ukrainians there. Then when we come down to this area of the railway line, they've really made some fairly quick advances, taking Prokhoretsk, sort of surrounding a bunch of Ukrainian soldiers who managed to escape that encirclement, but then moving really quite rapidly into the south or the southwest towards Sahivka and Zhelane, and then up here to Vesely. Some claims that they have control over Vesely now. As you can see, Andrew Perpetua has the Russians half controlling that town. So yeah, that is worrying for the Ukrainians. Just see if there's any. No, there's nothing until we get further down there to around Konstantinivka. Okay, so there we go. That is a challenge. Russians advancing south of the railway line, as according to Suryat maps, south of Vovcha. There is discussion about this in the Institute for the Study of War, but nothing that's going to add too much to your knowledge base there. Just lots of tough fighting going on. This is really challenging. The Russians are making consistent gains there. Then when we come further to the south, past Karlivka, past that little agricultural settlement of Nevelska that's still kind of presenting itself as a bit of an issue for the Russians to advance further forward from there. We come to Krasnohorivka, where, according to Surat maps, the Russians have taken more to the north of Krasnohorivka, advancing into the other neighborhoods of the town, because it's not just this more densely populated area here, but there is an element of Krasnohorivka that goes on towards this reservoir up here, and that's where the Ukrainians are now defending. But they did push back yesterday. This was not from today, this was from yesterday's mapping that I just forgot to add those. I'd missed the fact that the Ukrainians had counterattacked in the south of Krasnohorivka. Now, it would be interesting if that's anything that they continue with to try and stop the Russians from making these inexorable advances towards the north, give them something to think about. In Krasnohorivka here, that's what Suryat maps indicates is the advance. The Russians taking control over the last section of the core part of Krasnohorivka and entering the northern part of the town. In addition, the Ukrainian army advance south of the town was reversed. So that was that attack we're talking about yesterday, counterattack. And now he's saying that is being reversed. So I presume that means that area is now a grey zone. But we'll see. It could just be not a counterattack, but a mapping change, and who knows? It was claimed that Suryat Maps has claimed that was a counterattack yesterday. Okay, moving on, we then come further to the south around Novomykolivka and onto Konstantinivka, where there is quite a bit of chatter concerning the activities of the Russians. As you can see from Andrew Perpetua, they've really pushed on quite a lot. Certainly between Konstantinivka and Vuhledar, right in the middle, towards this road, maybe around Vodyane, maybe a bit further south previously, but seeming to get closer and closer to this road in a number of different places. Here we have an area along a tree line, so that is just here. Surat maps saying that the Russians have taken control of that puts them only a couple of clicks to the east of the road there, and actually that's agreed by both mappers. That's only 1.4 kilometers away, so it's getting really difficult for the Ukrainians in this area as well. Just to give you what they say, another access was opened up by the Russian army to try and reach the T0524 road. The Institute for the Study of War says a Russian mill blogger lamented that Russian forces are continuing to conduct thoughtless mechanized assaults southwest of Donetsk city, likely referring to the July 24th Russian reinforced battalion-sized mechanized assault against Konstantinivka. and claimed that Russian forces launched these assaults without electronic warfare coverage to protect against Ukrainian first-person view drones. Okay, this could be referring to some of these really large-scale attacks. Really, compared to the whole of this war, some of them have been fairly big, but not the biggest you'd expect. And some others that have been quite big, like I think one in Krasnohorivka, it was actually 6 vehicles and that was repelled, but that seems quite big now. It just goes to show how things have changed. But some of these attacks have been less than ideal, according to some Russian mill bloggers, saying they're a bit thoughtless. One towards Konstantinivka being an example. But anyway, certainly some gains around there, as according to both mappers. And as I said yesterday, this whole Western front is really challenging for the Ukrainians. They are spread very thin. They are lacking in reserves that are being currently mobilized and trained up. The Russians likewise, but they're just happy to throw in their equipment and personnel, willy-nilly, and they end up scraping out some consistent territorial gains, which is worrying on the map. Right, okay, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate your support. Take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle-pits.